Hello, this is Lisa Lee, and welcome to this week's enrichment reading. We are entering the Akashic Records. Sort of when I woke up, I had this like, we're going to be like doing some digging or something like that. I couldn't get it exactly, but going into the Akashic Records at the 8th house. And we're going to find out what that means. I'm not completely sure. So let's go ahead and get some cards out and see where this is leading us. Where is this leading us today? With the box, the womb. Oh, interesting. Possibility and then conception. That's an interesting combination right there. And the storm. The bottom of the deck energy being the threshold. So I'm like feeling very powerfully that there is something here, because the 8th house stuff, like as it comes up and like what I'm seeing in front of me is something that it's like a belief or a vow that you carried across lifetimes, with the womb here, ancestral lines. And it probably once protected you, but I think what we're looking at here with the threshold is that it somehow restricts your intimacy with life. The lighting here is not my favorite. Is that better? Yeah. All right, so with the room, the womb, and the storm, I kind of like the sound of that too, and the threshold here. Let's take a look and see what our guides want to give us in the way of a story. So I'm just going to take a couple of deep breaths and connect really deeply. There's a Saturn energy that I'm kind of picking up on. Nine of Wands. What did Saturn have you carry that was sacred, but you got to put it down now? The empty room with the 9 of Pentacles and the Emperor. And here's the 2 of Cups with the 10 of Cups. Okay, so this is a huge threshold for you. With the 2 of Cups and the 10 of Cups, this is about a level of emotional satisfaction with another. And a 2 of Cups is, again, going to be somebody who... There's a mirroring with the 2 of Cups, but it's not an enmeshment. And there's something here about the 10 of Cups experience of emotional fulfillment in every cup. So emotional fulfillment at the level of intimacy, because intimacy is coming up here, and I think that's why we're looking at the 8th house. And when I was sort of running my hands over these cards, like there's something about like something that restricts your intimacy with life. And with the 10 of Cups and the 2 of Cups, like we're talking about like intimacy with life on like 10 different levels, really like closeness, you know. And also 10 of Cups is, again, it's just a level of emotional fulfillment that leaves no room for want. And so with the 9 of Wands here being about like what you're carrying from the past, and there's this like Saturnian, like a Saturn kind of influence, because I when I look at this empty room, I keep on seeing the borders of the box, and I keep on thinking like life on life terms, life on life's terms. Life on life's terms is going to be the circumstances that you can't control, who you were born with, like who you were born to, and the traits that you inherited that would be very like powerfully the part of you that expresses into the world. You had no control over who you are, actually, like as a zygote. And then you don't have any control over what formed you in the way of your environment. And then you don't have any control over the opportunities that allowed you to mature in various ways in order to like give you the perspective that you have. So you have very little control around who you become in a lot of different ways. Where you have tremendous control is what you do with the experiencing. What do you do with the experience that you have? And so one of the things that came up for me this week when I was journaling was I did this whole thing with trust, and you know, there was a lot of deep work that I did this week, and one of the things that was kind of profound is where there is free will, where the presence of free will actually exists, it's in what you do with the experiences that you have. And so you cannot control how mature you were when you made a decision that either feels like it helped your life or devastated your life. Like you can't control your maturity level when you made decisions. And I know that I want to just like sit with that for a second, because a lot of times when we have this fear and we have this fear response and we live in like as a fear based person. It has to do with the fact that we think we can somehow avoid mistakes, and that if we just knew better or were better or in some way like had the better instructions or had the better upbringing or had the better equipment, like that we wouldn't have suffered. And that's actually a false premise, because suffering is a part of life on life's terms. It's a part of circumstances that you have no control over. And when you make a decision that you feel is the right decision that turns out later to not be the right decision, you can't control the maturity level that you enter that decision with. And so blaming yourself or somehow trying to take dominion over every little thing with some thought process that says that you made a mistake so you have to do better, and now if you do better you won't do it again. Yes, you mature, and that maturity becomes your shield of armor. That maturity becomes your confidence. That maturity becomes your voice. That maturity becomes your power. That becomes a great asset to you in everything that you do. And it signals to people who are at your level that you are of caliber and that you are of character and that you are worthy of, like, you know, interacting with. It actually places you in a certain kind of way. Your maturity will always do that. Your lack of maturity will do the same thing. And your lack of maturity will signal to people that you are denied access. And so that maturity, which you have very little control over because it takes opportunity and experiencing to get the value of it, it's like what you do with the experience. Do you mature with the experience? Do you do better? Do you push yourself into a new experience? Do you expand? Are you constantly like working with what you have to become more? Is there always an effort here? And I don't want to like have people be like, you know, well, I am enough. You are enough, except if you find yourself feeling powerless, then the call is to find ways to be intimate with your power. And that's not about other people. And so when we think about this empty room here, you know, we think about the possibilities. What, given your circumstances, are the possibilities that you bring to a certain, you know, situation and that you live into and that becomes your arc of maturity or lack thereof. But the Nine of Wands here is, you know, where we have a lot of maturing, but we have to sort of like move into this next conception, this next version of who you are. And that's the threshold. That means you're like on the threshold of something completely new. And so that those box, you know, when we think about the empty room, when we think about the parameters of the room, the parameters of the room are kind of fixed. And so there's a lot of things that you don't have control over, and there's a lot of things that you didn't have control over. And all of those like reward and punishment things that go along with like what you had control over, what you didn't have control over, the lack of maturity that you made what decision with, how did it end up informing your story, what does it mean to pick up that story and work with it and make it something new, and one way or another, like what is the purpose of whatever you're going through that brings you closer to that intimate power source within you. This empty room says that there are parameters, there are limits to your powers of persuasion, there are limits to your powers of acquisition, and there are limits to your powers of holding. And we're using financial language there because we're poisoned, and we need to kind of understand what the boundaries end up being. And when I say we're poisoned, I mean there's a lot of programming that you don't realize is even there, that nobody realizes even there. It's so deep that we have to stop and we have to kind of question ourselves somewhere along the line and say, like, am I to blame? No. Okay, what am I going to do with that? Well, I was in this situation. This is the story that I had to operate through. This is the story that I'm operating through. In that story, what am I doing with the experience? That's where you have freedom. You don't have freedom in other places. And when you're grappling towards freedom and screaming about the injustice of the lack of freedom, you're not at the ground level working with tangibly the materials in front of you and with you and through you. And so with this empty room being about your potential and everything that you can fill this room with, and the parameters being about what you find in the way of boundaries, what you find in the way of like Saturnian influence, this Nine of Wands is like rallying and battling against life on life's terms and expecting a different outcome by demanding that things work in a certain way when they actually don't, and facing that. And so let's look at the Nine of Wands a little bit, because with this empty room, you have the Nine of Pentacles. That's every gift you were born with. You're not helpless, and you're not without assets, and you're not without gifts. If you're having trouble accessing inspiration, if you're having trouble accessing original thought, then there is some work to be done on repairing your relationship with the gods. and repairing your relationship with the ancestors, and repairing your relationship with your imagination and with your freedom related to that. Because imagination in a child is supposed to mature into a psychic ability, intuition as adults. And when we cut it off at the past, because you can't believe it, belief and disbelief, all right? If belief is permission, and belief is powerful enough in the form of a placebo pill to heal someone, then we know that is a substance that is worth cultivating. But if the first thing that happens when you come of age and you begin to decipher the world is you are told that you can't believe any of the inner world information that is coming to you, and that you have to dismiss all of that and evacuate that space for a set of rules and a set of standards and a set of ambitions that don't come from the source of inspiration within you, but come from some prescription of the good person and the bad person, the right way and the wrong way, the acceptable story and the unacceptable story. So that indoctrination that we have to undo is first kind of going back to like home base and putting down all of the lost and won battles based on the game that we played trying to achieve the goals we were given. Those goals were never about our life and our potential and who we are anyway. Those goals were really never about our intrinsic purpose anyway. And so kind of stepping into a primal worldview and starting at the base camp is first understanding that you inherited a wealth of traits in the way that you communicate the ancestors all the way back. That relationship with the ancestors is important. That relationships with the gods of the ancestors is important, because this is a relationship to yourself, essentially. And so you have traits, a wealth of them, that you're meant to be using for your purpose. And so that's the goal. That's the job description for the job that you're looking for. You're not looking for a role. You're looking for expressing yourself. And so that's the spiritual practice. And what it means to fill the empty room with a sense of self. Fill the empty room with your presence. Be self-possessed. It's not hollowing yourself out for an ideal that was never meant to be yours. It's not abandoning yourself for a job that was never purposed to you. Like, there's so many ways in which the indoctrination and the servitude and the slavery has us internalizing that stuff and having it inform who we are. And that's a disempowering kind of place. And so what it means to sort of take dominion over this room which is empty and full of the promise of your potential, and everything that you were born with in the womb, all of that programming is there for you to discover yourself, take dominion over your experience, and live into the seams of your life. Fill the space of all that you are. Actually meet your potential. And to the extent that there are boundaries here, there are things that Saturn has you carry. But there are also ways in which you can expand that room. You might have to kind of work with the borders there, and the borders of life and death are a good example of, you might have to work with the borders. You might have to take life on life's terms, but you can expand into that space and expand that space. That's the growth arc. That's the maturity arc. And so with the womb here being about, well, what is this Nine of Pentacles? Because this Nine of Pentacles right here is all that makes you valuable to other people, all that makes you valuable to yourself, and to say that everybody is not intrinsically valuable, like there's no truth. Like there's only that people are intrinsically valuable, but how are they intrinsically valuable? Because if you look at the infant, you're looking at something that has inestimable worth. Anybody who would put a price tag on an infant is just categorically insane. And yet, as we go through our lifespan, as we expand into our lifespan, as we start to move into the world, suddenly there's a lot of values being placed on whether or not you are of value. Are you of value to someone? Well, it depends, how they can use you, right? Are you of value to an organization? Are you of value to a family? Are you of value to a partner? And what are all of the signals that tell you you are or you are not of value? Are you of value to a friend? And now we're internalizing the external values that we're sort of siphoning through and assigning to ourselves based on the way that we're treated or not treated, based on the way that we are regarded or not regarded. And none of that, 0% of that, actually speaks to the intrinsic, ineffable value. An infant is not valued by their contribution. An infant is not valued by how of use they can be to a system and to those using a system to use others. Like, that whole extraction model and that exchange model, and what is their net worth? What is their worth? That's not it. And so like, if we know that that's categorically not it, and we have to kind of pull ourselves out of habits of looking what other people have and finding our value, looking how other people treat us and being hurt because they either valued us the way we wanted to be valued, or they showed us that they devalued us because they did something that didn't reflect that they value us. I mean, all of the ways in which we let that stuff in and affect the way that we move through the world and affect the way that we see ourselves is a disconnect from who we are and what we have of value and what it means to walk in that. And so first, remove yourself from that. Don't look at other people for the mirrors that way, because people are meant to mirror you, and mirroring is a very important, like, it's a faculty of sorting. It's a sorting measure. So when you go into the world knowing your value and knowing what you're worth, and when you bring that into the world and you look around and you see people, you're going to see them behave in different ways based on how they interpret you. And so if you see them devalue you, if you see them signal to you that you are not of value to them, that is not a referendum on who you are. That is a signal that says from one person to another, I'm not meant to be in your life. You're not meant to be in mine. And that life on life's terms means that you can battle against that. You can fight against that. You can kick against the pricks. You can push hard to try and get entry or access to this person's life, or to this person's whatever it is that you feel that you want from them in the way of valuing you. But that's going to be a battle that you can't fully win. There's no, there is a form of acquisitions and holdings when you think about something that you want in the form of someone else, or something that you want that isn't really for you, but that you want the attention of. Like, there's ways in which we can be distorted or perverse in our approaches to what it is to operate in life. But ultimately, you're meant to express yourself authentically, and you're meant to really get in touch with what that means at a spiritual level, that ancestry, those gods. This Nine of Pentacles, what you have, what you were born with in the way of gifts. And so when we think about this threshold that you're on, and what it means to operate with like proper mirroring, there is mirroring that you are going to get that is purely information. This person doesn't value you because you are not supposed to have a place in their life, and they're making that clear. Or that other person who wants you to value them, you don't have a place in your life for them. That's okay. You're clearing the path. They're clearing the path. They're helping you move to where you're meant to be. Those parameters, those boundaries that people set and that are set by other things are saying that this is something you do not control, you do not have access. And rather than let that be internalized as information where you downgrade your own value, or believe that this somehow is an injustice because of the value that you believe that you're meant to have and how you want to be perceived, there's a lot of tyranny in that is kind of in the way from ultimate success in Ten of Cups relationships. Because just as there is mirroring that tells you what's not for you, there is mirroring that signals what is for you. And so there are going to be people that you meet that you see your value and treat you as such. Now they get access. They get access to the bounty at that intimate level. They get access to the bounty at that level of opportunity. They get access to the bounty at that level of relationship, which is rich, which is the Ten of Cups fulfillment level connections. And there's fertile soil. And when you have access offered to those who are at your level, who are meant to be in your life, you create together at a level that is unmatched. And you create a life together, and you create friendships together, and you create all the different ideas that you can do are not by yourself pushing alone through like a gray scale of misery. Life is alive with color and people and things and creation. And you are inspired by the gods who are alive in you and connected to you, and the ancestors who came to express through you and waited for your permission. And that's what the Emperor and the Knight of Pentacles is all about, taking dominion over your world and galvanizing, within and connecting to that inner rich resources and moving into that empty room with life. And fulfilling that potential at every access of giftedness, all of those Nine of Pentacles. But putting down the Nine of Wands, I didn't get, they didn't give me, I should have, it's not this way, these opportunities aren't here, I can't do anything, where I life on life's terms just leaves me miserable, the tools that I have to work with aren't good enough, I don't like these people, they're not cool enough, I need those other cool people to value me so that I can value myself more. None of that. all of the womb. What are you born with? What does it mean to sort of understand this life as a journey of self-discovery that isn't really about a lot else? Because you get to be you infinitely. The form that you are in right now is one step beyond the womb. It is the shape and size of you and everything that you were born with in the way of these 9 of Pentacles traits, gifts, the architecture of you, the form that you take. All of those things you have forever. Forever. And you're stuck with them forever too. Because living hell and what hell ends up being after this world is when you don't even like yourself. You don't even know yourself. And you end up stuck with yourself. And then you spend your life comparing the life that you had to the lives that other people are having, the life that you could have had to the life that other people are having. You're watching, people have the problems that you had and do totally different things with them. You have a panoramic view on what was available to you, except that you were shackled to a story. And you didn't know that until after you've been emancipated from it. And instead of embracing who you are and loving who you are, you're constantly living in an underworld of hating who you are and hating the aspects of yourself that are thriving without you, instead of joining in what it means to thrive in that space. And so a life well lived and a form embodied and a presence that is, a self-possessed experience is one where you use every inch of your life to discover yourself, and not just discover yourself, but ensure that you love yourself, because that's the vehicle that is yours for eternity in the way of a consciousness perspective that you can look through. And you might hate it so much that you go back for another life, and then that just ends up being an aspect of yourself that you move into and out of, but it is often abandoned and it doesn't need to be. And so what it means to fully live into yourself and fully live into every aspect of yourself is to love yourself so completely and to know yourself so completely that there's not an inch of you unused. There's not an inch of you that isn't put to some form of use and meaning. That's true love, is to see all of the aspects of yourself as being nothing but full of potential, and then offer yourself an opportunity in all that the potential that is there. And again, life on life's terms means that you're going to have to engage with things that limit, things that you have to carry, and things that you can expand beyond. But there's a process here with the womb. And so let's look what the gods want to say about what you're born with, what you actually have on offer for yourself. Because it's not the 9 of Wands what you got and you didn't get. It's not the 9 of Wands what you have and you don't have. It's not the 9 of Wands like anything, okay? And it's certainly not holding someone else's karma and holding somebody else's life story as your own, or holding some life story that you learned about that you wanted to be yours, but it isn't, and the disappointment is so great, and now that there's all is lost. Like this empty room means look around. Where do you have potential? Where is there possibility? What are you doing with it? Because that's the substance of experiencing, and through that experiencing, you get these points. You get these karma points called maturity. And with that maturity, you then bring that maturity into the world. You've leveled up. There is an aspect of game with the world that we're in and the Saturnian bindings that we have to operate around. Without that maturity, you're going to show up and people are going to clock you as immature, and you're going to rank yourself. Because you know what it is to encounter somebody who has no maturity. And you can see it, whether they're in a 15-year-old body or they're in a 50-year-old body that's acting 15. You know what that looks like, and other people know what it looks like in you. And you also know what it looks like when you come in contact with someone who has maturity that is much more advanced than yours. You recognize it. You see it. It's usually very alluring. You usually want that for yourself. There's a way in which that kind of looks like leadership a little bit. What we emulate has to do with what maturity level we want to achieve for ourselves and in what way. But that emulating should lead us to ourselves and not away from ourselves. And so when we think about our maturity level, if you're not in the act of experiencing and gaining your own wisdom and your own maturity, if you're floating around the surface like a water bug and you're never getting through those depths, then you are abandoning yourself, you're abandoning your purpose, you're abandoning your life course. And that is something that you have to negotiate with as an eternal sort of circumstance. And so like when we think about the things that we can put down with Saturn's limits, the things we don't control, but the things that we pick up is what we do control. And what we do control is our own maturing. And the value of that maturing is wealth. That is the 9 of Pentacles. So everything in your life that has forced you to mature is another coin in your purse. And that maturity is what is of value, because that maturity gets you closer to your voice and closer to the value of your gifts that you hold in knowing yourself. I mean, this is kind of circular, but it's also the most important thing if you really think about it. That experiencing life and the maturity you get, that's the payment, that's the karma points, that's the aura points, that's the confidence, that's the magnetism, that's the wisdom, that's the access to the divine genius. That Queen of Cups with the womb here, and the Queen of Pentacles, like this is the transfer of wealth. That deep inner space, that deep inner knowing, that depth of wisdom and understanding. With the bottom of the deck being Knight of Cups, what you have on offer for the world is a baby of incredible intrinsic, like think about an infant. There's no way of putting a worth or a value on that. So any way that somebody values you outside of yourself, that's all fiction, because nothing can put a value on you. There is an endless worth. There is an intrinsic value. But there's also something separate. There's something called significance. And significance is in relationship to the ecosystem that you're in and how you are significant to others in one way or another. How you are significant to yourself in one way or another. How you bring significance into your experience in one way or another. This is where you look at what you have in this empty room available to you to work with. And you bring yourself into the experience of experiencing your life, working tactically with every material, every circumstance, every story, everything at your disposal to understand yourself and communicate that understanding. That's that Queen of Cups. And she is deep. She knows everything about her emotional landscape. She has built into her inner world. She has a sense of herself that is connected to the womb space. That infinite fount of possibility and creativity. She moves with the currents. The currents move her. She can translate the wisdom of the depths. That is what she has on offer. And moving into that is also what translates into a tangible wealth, a tangible something to offer others. And so that Knight of Cups and that Two of Cups in the mirroring, when you go into the world, there are going to be people who value you where you are. You're only as good as it's not that you're only as good as your level of maturity. It's that you can't level up from a maturity level 15 to a maturity level 30 on a wings and a prayer and wishes alone. There's a lot of work and skill that goes to building the version of yourself that you want to be. If you want to be appreciated in a certain light, then there is an aspect of what it is to move into like that empty room, to be self-possessed, to bring presence anywhere you go, is to bring your presence and to have that presence be informing how you project. Because again, setting your own value and letting people respond to it is a sorting system. Welcome, not welcome. And then you need that because you're not an open door. Okay, you're not going to just let everyone come in. There is some aspect of people have to be on the level in order for you not to be drowning because they're hanging on to you and they don't want to have to learn how to swim because they're just going to let you go where you're going and take this is the ride. That's not it. You don't want that. You want to learn how to swim. And you want people around you to learn how to swim. And you do not want to be full of a boat full of people that you have to drag who don't know what it is to have the maturity to get in the water. And so what it means for you to accept that sorting system is a rejection is God's protection, whether you're doing the rejection or it's coming from somebody else. Look at who is around you. What are you meant to do with those relationships that you are in ecosystem with? In the ecosystem that you're in, and everything is born to this world, is born to an ecosystem. So wherever you were born that you don't have control over, to whoever you were born around that you also don't have control over, those are energies that you are meant, designed, in purpose, with interacting with. What can you make of the potential that is before you and that you have with the tools that are available to you? How can you find value in the life that you're living? Even if there are limits there, where's the value in the life that you're living? You can't say there's no value in the life that I'm living because that's very, very close to there's no value in me. And there is, by fact, value in you because you can't look at a baby and say that there's no value in that life. There's no value in that baby. Look at the circumstances they were born to. Look at the opportunities that they don't have. There's no value in that baby. You say that to yourself when you look around your life and you're like, my life sucks and there's nothing I can do and it's just the way that it is. You're saying there's no value to my life. And there is value to your life, because even if you don't have any opportunities, even if you were born and live in a locked room, there is still value and contribution that you can bring. There just is. Because you cannot look at somebody in a locked room and say that person has no value. And so what does it mean to find value in that room? What does it mean to find value in the circumstances that you find yourself in? The person that you are. What does it mean for you to find value in the person that you are? The exact features that you have, the exact voice that you have, the exact mode of expression that you have. I'm not talking about the outfits that you wear, the masking that people do, the performance that people put on to them for themselves. Man, the delusion is like a river with so many people, because that's how far they are from this sense of their own value. And so for you to step into the sense of your own value is not comparing yourself and your opportunities and then finding yourself somehow powerless in relationship to the world that you are sitting in. You can clock that there's a level of powerlessness in your accessibility to certain goals, but that doesn't mean that there's powerlessness that you have to accept as who you are. And so that Nine of Wands, like putting those Nine of Wands, how people view you, whether they accept you or not, whether they understand or not, they're just sorting themselves. Even if everyone sorts themselves out, now the path is clear for you to encounter you and let yourself encounter you. Because that's taking dominion over your world, is being in your lane firmly. And what this Queen of Cups is taking the wisdom that you carry with you and bringing it and offering it as a gift. Because the right people are going to see you and understand you, and the wrong people are going to sort themselves out, and let the gods deal with the wrong people. The gods are dealing with the wrong people anyway. That's their life. That's their story. Those are their stumbling blocks. Those are their assets. Whatever they are, you can't see inside their story. You don't want to see inside their story. You want them to be in their lane doing their thing. And if they're misappropriating you, let them. They can't really get anywhere with what it means to self-abandon, because that's just giving dark forces, and that's the way that it is. And dark forces, again, shadow and light. Light is clarity. Shadow is you don't even know yourself. You don't even know what you're doing for yourself. Your lack of maturity is on display, and you're driving yourself off a cliff, and you're driving your life off a cliff. And that's okay, because that's just what you're doing, and that's where you are. That has nothing to do with somebody else and where somebody else is going. And so again, holding these Nine of Wands, this person did that person did that, those people are going to do that, is not part of what it means for you to tap into your assets, take dominion over your life, and live into the potential that is meant for you, that no one can take away from you. Live into the expansion that is meant for you, that is your eternal starting point. That threshold, when you're done with this life, you have another journey. You're not done journeying. And that journey is a journey where you're learning about yourself and what your gifts are, absent the form that holds you. And so if you're learning about yourself and who you are in the form that holds you, you're getting stronger with a lot more to work with. And so there is such a positive thing that happens when you lean into your life and the experience of your assets and the experience of what you have to bring to the world. And you may be looking at the world and saying, nobody wants what I have to bring. I don't care what I have to bring. It doesn't matter. I'm just going to get my bag. That's the kind of thing that happens. But that's Saturn and Gemini is about there are limits to that. You know what I mean? Then you're limiting yourself. You can live with the Nine of Wands, communicating the Nine of Wands as, this and being in the stagnant water that does not move. That's an option, but that's not really living into your potential. The Gemini is finding ways to communicate, 1,000 different ways to communicate, reporting, from ground zero of all of the despair. Reporting from the diagnoses of every possible, there's so much here. There's a million talking points that you could hang on the wall and call it a personality. But the bottom line here with Saturn and the material experiencing of your life and gaining maturity. Gaining maturity means where you are feels like it's not enough. You don't have enough to cope with. You don't have enough to work with. You can't get there. There's too much against you. That means that you are at a place where your coping skill is no match for the circumstance that you find yourself in. When your coping skill is no match for the circumstance that you find yourself in, that is a call to mature. That means that the coping skills have to become more. And you may have faced time after time and time after time in your life where your coping skills had to become more. And that might be where there's a world of maturity with this Queen of Cups that you can tap into and bring voice to, take dominion over your life, find a way in which the gifts that you have communicate, Gemini, to translate into a kind of meaning and a kind of strength and a kind of maturity and a kind of confidence that establishes you with the Queen of Pentacles. Because voice just is not just about what's on display. It's also about your inner compass and where you want to go and where you know you're going and what it's going to take to get there. So all of that stuff is critical in terms of what it means to take dominion over your life and operate into this. This empty room is going to be the parameters of your life. You can do anything with it. You can fill it with anything that you want. You have a choice to fill that room. It's a room. It's a lifespan. It has limits. There's a beginning and there's an end, and you can fill it with anything. You could create anything with that empty room. And you have all of the tools that are available to you in your environment. And you might feel like it's not enough. Somebody else has more, but that's again, we're going to pull you out of that 9 of Wands. That's a breaking point. That's acquisition. I want to have that for myself. That's holdings. Don't let it go. It has to be mine. And I worked for it, so it's mine. That's acquisition and holdings. You can do that, 9 of Wands. You can strip yourself to nothing and stand there, a warrior of your own kingdom that you don't even like, that you don't even want to be in, that you don't even want to participate with. And you can ignore all of the Saturnian, the Saturn strictures, the life on life's terms that are trying to push you into a greater expression, into to your giftedness, and to taking dominion over your world in a way that is related to you personally, tailor-made to the significance that you want to bring, that you choose to bring with the experience that you have, with the maturity that you have gained. And that Scorpio card, that 8th house stuff, I knew we were going to be in 8th house like territory. There's a call for transformation, an intense, passionate, like intimate, deep, resourceful, mysterious, regenerative. There is even like a compost and reborn. Let the stuff die. Let the things die. Let the things break down into nothing, and then plant new things in that soil. Move that stagnant water that hasn't seen the light. That inside space, that hiding, that like deep inside and nobody gets to have access to it. Move it, that Queen of Cups. Upset the quiet a little bit. The tyranny around comfort zones that don't offer you any nutrients, like, move out of that. Because there is 9 of Pentacles. And if you're saying like, I don't have any 9 of Pentacles, I wasn't born with any giftedness. Everybody doesn't like me. All that stuff that happens, like, that's the 9 of Wands. We can't do that. We can't do that. We're not looking to others to give us our sense of our value. Our sense of value is established at birth. What we do with what we have in the way of experience and maturing, that's on us. And that comes from actually saying to yourself, like, what are the structures here that keep me from having the experience I want to have? Whatever those structures are, like, what does it mean to move beyond them? What does it mean to see the limitations that I have in terms of the skills that I have and the coping skills that I have that aren't enough right now? What does it mean to expand beyond them? What does it mean to strengthen them? What does it mean to take one corner of my life and begin to work on it in that direction? Because I have an experience, and I'm either going to sit here and watch myself experiencing a powerlessness that gets me very little except more powerlessness, or I'm going to start to think about, where do I have power in this empty room? Where do I have power in these circumstances? What can I do with that little bit of power that I have to expand my skill set, my coping skill set, so that I have a little bit more maturity, so that I can deal with this better. And then in dealing with this better, I have more bandwidth for something else to come in and begin to build on that dealing with this better, that maturity level. And then another maturity builds from that. And you keep on amassing maturity from your experience, and it's a skill set. It's a gravity. And you can feel when somebody is mature, you know it. And you can feel when someone's not. And you get placed in that ranking as well. And there's no avoiding it. Because someone who is mature, who has a maturity level that is more than yours, will clock in an instant an immature little twinkle of like, oh, access denied. Just like you do. Just like you can be in a room full of people and the one person talking about everybody else and, acting immature in an instant. They don't realize it. They're not self-aware. They don't see their lack of maturity. And you know that they don't, because they're speaking from it, from a place of pride, as if it's like as if it's okay to say those things, as if it's okay to act that way. But you know that it's not, because you've come from that place and you've matured beyond it. And so you recognize just even like the twinge, like little like it's like a little thing, it's the littlest things that disqualify you that you don't realize are disqualifying you. It's the littlest things that qualify you that you don't realize that you're being qualified by. And so there really is something with this 8th house, intimate power. How do you get access to that intimate power? Well, it's not about whether or not other people are clocking your maturity level and qualifying you or disqualifying you for places in their life and opportunities. You have to first work on what it means to know where you're at in terms of your maturity. That means looking at your life, looking at your coping skills, and understanding where you need to bring strength and where you need to bring attention and where you need to tap into some of the qualities that you have and put them to work and taking dominion over your circumstances to the extent that you have that gaining of maturity in the direction of the gifts that you already have. Communication with the self. It's not putting all of your energy into stuff you can't control, not putting all your energy into people you can't control, not putting your energy into opportunities that you can't control, but putting your energies into cultivating your strength, cultivating your maturity, and moving with that maturity into knowing where you can and cannot go, knowing what it means to go there. And there are limits. You can want to be a rocket scientist, but you have to go to school. And if you can't tactically do it, immediately, then what does it mean to take increment steps in that direction? But taking increment steps in a direction and gaining maturity as a result of those increment steps in a direction is the difference between living and choosing not to. It's the difference between moving into that room of your life and everything that, constrains it, or sitting back and just saying, I'm just going to wait this out. Then the water stagnates. And then every little tremor causes a level of overwhelm because there haven't been the coping skills to bring muscle and confidence to what it means to overcome challenges that seem formidable and that are formidable, but are there and designed for you to gain strength through, for you to know yourself better through, for you to access those gifts and use them in those directions is to also know those gifts. And so what does it mean for you to move into this place of your potential with the womb and what you were born with, and the Queen of Pentacles, what you have to lay down in the way of your own abundance, what you have to lay down in the way of value into the life that you're living and the offering that is your life to this earth. Because your life is an offering to this earth. You were born with a purpose to serve on this earth while you were becoming, while you were being created, while your form was taking form, while that form was going to inform an eternal purpose, which starts with an eternal journey at the level of threshold where you left off with your life. What skills have you amassed during this lifetime that you bring into the other worlds, into an infinite existence? It's going to be all the non-material stuff. It's going to be all the stuff that is not associated with your bank account and associated with your sense of how you get it done. And that's the difference between getting it done at the level of becoming the CEO or getting it done at the level of having a really good garden background, of in your backyard. You got a garden that is thriving. You get it done. That's a skill. And so when we build these skills, we build them forever, for forever. And when we fail to build these skills, then, that's that 9 of Wands experience of life where you're acquisition and holdings and you're going to just stand there forever fighting for something that's not even feeding you. It's not even really inspiring you, barely inspiring others. It's a facade that has to be held up against all else because of the structures, because this is all I have to do. This is all I have. I don't have anything else. Well, no, that's not true. You're abandoning yourself for something that's all you have, that's not even feeding you, because you can't see that there's something more. Well, there's something more. That's where you start to dig. You dig inside of yourself. What do I have to get through this day that's going to make this day good? And so Gaia is you're connected. You're connected to the earth. And this root chakra is where you root yourself. So rooting yourself at the source of all life is going to be your prosperity. So what do I mean when I say rooting yourself at the source of all life? Rooting yourself at the source of all life is saying, okay, here's the empty room that I'm born into. That's going to be your lifespan. It starts at one year and it ends at a different year, and everybody gets a different lifespan. And in that lifespan, there are going to be experiences that you don't control, like who you were born to, where you were born, and the opportunities that that birth offers you. And the limitations that that birth offers you. That's going to be stuff that is part of the lifespan that you have no control over, that you were born into, that everything has an appointed time, and that you are meant to experience. And from those experiences, you have slotted to receive for yourself forever, eternally, a series of skills related to growth and maturation. And so what you do with your experience in the way of maturing ends up being your eternal inheritance. And you can do anything with that. There is a creative potential that is endless. You can expand creatively into this lifespan so full that you have such a 10 of Cups experience, and that for those that are meant to travel with you, you really do have that intimacy with self and others, that true emotional fulfillment, that true sense of being loved and appreciated, being valued, and having that value translate into meaningful wealth that you can comfortably sit on, feeling established and prosperous. And so Gaia, the frequency of Gaia, reminds us that we are infinitely connected to one another, just as we are to our great mother and the universe that birthed us all. So what are we rooting in? Are our roots going into an economy that is garbage poopy? Are our roots going into a purpose that is a job that is just not ours, that we are going to find our way with intimate power, past and through, that even if those structures are there permanently right now, it's not forever, because nothing is forever, because that power comes from within and that power directs from within. When we're rooted in a sense of ourselves as holy, and when we're rooted in every single one of the things that we are, when you wake up and you look in the morning, when you wake up in the morning and you look in the mirror with that 2 of Cups, what do you see? Do you see like how everyone's jealous? Because that's not it. All right, that is not it. Do you see how like they're pretty and you're not? No, that's not it. Do you see that you were once pretty but you can't be pretty because no, that's not it. That has nothing to do with it. When you think about what you have on offer for the world, do you think about the people that you want to appreciate you? Or do you think about like what you actually have to give tactically, tangibly? Do you know what that is? Is it a sparkly personality? Doesn't have to be. Because who you're meant to give to and who you're meant to interact with, who's meant to receive you, requires you know yourself so much that you actually even know what you're presenting and what you have on offer. And if you find that you are eternally hiding, then it's going to be very hard for those that are meant to experience your value to even recognize it. And if you are very far away from what it means to tangibly being able to access that, then there's work to be done on self-expression, which means that there's work to be done on kind of getting in touch with, like, who are you? You're connected to the earth. And so you have a sentience that is hers. And so the first thing that you can do is know that you are spiritually blessed by the bounty of every single life that has come before you, that makes up the gene pool, that makes who you are. And so if you look at yourself and you have disdain, if you think that you're disgusting, if you think that you have failed you, if you see nothing but like a litany of complaints when you look in the mirror, that's not having proper reverence for what you were born with in the way of this bevy of gifts and the lifespan that is yours and all the features that come with it and all the gifts that come with those features. So ancestral worship is first and foremost a relationship with the self where you look at your nose and you think, look at that amazing nose. It gives me not just the feature on my face, but the bevy of wisdom of every single person that has lived with this nose before me. Because the physical manifestation of a body is attached to all of the stories of that body's development and all of the stories that develop that trait from what? From a point of amorphous value into its potential. Meaning the trait itself holds a level of maturity that you can have access to, and you can have access to that wisdom too. Belief is permission. Belief in your own value. Belief in your own value is belief that each and every ancestor that came before you contributed something valuable, and that you can learn from them by connecting with them and connecting with the version of yourself that is infinite, and sitting with yourself and figuring out what about me expresses in what way, and what does it bring me in the way of a flow state, in the feeling of living. That's when your genes are singing If you love to sing, if you love to paint, your genes are singing. You feel yourself come alive with those traits coming back into form, exercising through you, experiencing through you. That beautiful voice, and the ancestors that developed it, they sing with you. That's joy, and you're doing the right thing. But when you're a doc boss, pushing yourself to work and being like, achieve this way, and you have to look this way, or else you're ugly and stupid. Like, no, that's not it. Okay, and so when we think about spiritual work and like what's the value of connecting with ourselves, we're not good enough anyway. That's not it. I'm going to show up and people are just going to reject me. That's not it. It's a spiritual practice, connecting with yourself. It's a spiritual practice, expressing yourself. It's your spiritual practice, knowing yourself. It's sacred. And so bringing the profane into that space and judging yourself because you don't make some grade and you didn't make some grade and you don't have some quality of life and now the room is empty and you might as well just sit there. Even if you have no opportunities, you have an opportunity to discover each and every aspect of what it is to express yourself. And in that, you go into eternity with your tool belt fully, like you go into that energy of Lu, having every tool at the ready as you move into that threshold of eternity. And it's not just the threshold of eternity that you're waiting for. It's the threshold of the next phase of your life where you have developed the tools and the maturity from living beyond your comfort zone, from recognizing that you didn't have the coping skills and knowing that you weren't going to give up, but you were going to gain coping skills, even if it's a rocky process, even if it means being angry, even if it means cutting people off, even if it means going at it alone. Even if being alone, you feel disappointments because you didn't want to do it alone. Whatever that is, you're working with the story of your life in a way that isn't giving up on you, isn't deciding that you're not good enough, isn't having a referendum of devaluing who you are and what your opportunities are based on anything external to you. And connecting deeply with the source of all creation, deeply with the source of all life in spiritual practice, when you connect with yourself. And when you root in this knowing that you are of inestimable worth at a baseline, and nobody can tell you what your worth is. And now from there, you walk into any storm. I mean, I get it. We're entering a storm. Things are getting so gross and so bad right now. They've always been this way, but now they're this way for everybody, not just for those that are being persecuted and those that are being oppressed. Because there have always been people who are oppressed and persecuted, living in the shadow of this apocalypse of opportunity and lack of opportunity and having their potential cut off. This is not special. Your pain is not special. Our pain is not special. Every indigenous person who went through genocide, everyone who was colonized, including those whose bodies were colonized by way of patriarchy, like there is no end to the oppression that has been here all along, that has been an apocalypse for everyone's potential all along, that now is shining its light on the many. And so as we step into this moment of truth together, there's also an opportunity to step out of putting all this priority on the personal experience and elevating our pain to a level of eclipsing all opportunity for who we can become and for what we are, and internalizing all those value systems that tell us that we are only as valuable as what we bring to the table, when the value is set at birth as inestimable. And then what you value in yourself and how you put that to work for yourself has to do with achieving levels of maturity, and that deals with the parameters in your life that you're going to move around and through and with. The ways in which you're going to expand that level of coping skills to give you more and more freedom in the way of maturity, wisdom, and strength. And the way that maturity, wisdom, and strength expresses being what you offer, Knight of Cups, in relationship to others. That maturity is part of what people are clocking when they are siphoning, and it's part of what they're clocking when there's a sorting system at play where you're deciding that person gets access to my eternity, that person is rejected from my eternity. And that's it. That's where you have a level of power there. You don't really have power over whether or not you have to interfere and interface with energies that would have it out for you. Whatever it is, it's part of this room. Part of what it is to find those strengths and that aspect of your strength is finding the strength to overcome the idiots that would tell you to get in your box and stay in that corner because they're going to take that space for themselves. They're everywhere. Vampires are everywhere. Vampires are everywhere. Vampires are everywhere where people do not have their own source, where people are not their own source. And where people are not their own source is where people are inauthentic. And inauthentic is not like you're a bad, naughty, and evil. It's you need to mature. You don't even know yourself. You're in infancy in a lot of ways, and you're bottom feeding off of anything that you can grasp and try to make a sense of self with in the absence of an actual sense of self. That is narcissism. That's what it is. Narcissism is basically that. That's all that it is. And so, you know, the crumble, and right now we have a narcissistic collapse in every single direction, because a lot of people don't know that they're narcissists because they think of it as some bad, naughty, and evil mode of the world. But it's just you have abandoned yourself for something that is not you, and you are 9 of Wands doing everything in your power to hold it up. That's narcissism. To hold up what was never meant to be you or for you is to also not know yourself. To not know yourself is to need to bottom feed off of other things. That's narcissism. That's vampirism. And so, like, that's not about judgment and you're so bad and so evil. It's like you need to mature. You need to get your own center of gravity. You need to be rooted in the source of your own inspiration, not somebody else's. That's true power. And wherever you are, you can do that from, because it comes from making meaning of the room that you're in and the experiences that you've had, and putting those experiences to work for you to bring you something new and to give you some sense of direction. And if that connection to source, if that connection to self is not there, if the inspiration is constantly being like you're scavenging it from everywhere else, listen, your guides are going to bring you inspiration external from you. But if that's your only source of nutrients, then you're an addict that is addicted to something outside of you in order to make meaning. And that's not good. And everybody starts there. That's a level of immaturity. But in order to actually be operating from the source of your own wisdom, from the source of your own experience, from the source of your own life, from the source of the traits that make you you, it's not about depleting others for your psychic survival and depleting what they have to offer for your psychic survival. It's not a chronic complaining that is actually codependency. Chronic complaining without any solutions is a form of dependence, and it's a very tricky one. And so when we move into what it is to sort of step into the archetype of the scribe here, there's a storm going on. That's the narcissistic collapse. That's where everybody who is not connected to anything that is like truly rooted in what we're doing right now in the way of like self. To be rooted in the world that is crumbling is a terrifying experience right now. To be rooted in a performance is just going to avail to you that you aren't rooted at all. You know, that's all that's going to give you. But to be rooted in that sense of intimacy with self, intimacy with the source of everything that you have within you as skills, and knowing what they are and knowing what it is to cultivate them. It's also knowing what you love and knowing what makes you feel alive, knowing what flow states operate for you. Because the scribe is about preserving knowledge and information, but the shadow attribute is about altering facts or plagiarizing others' work. And we do this in this society because of hierarchy, because of standards set outside of ourselves, because of indoctrination where our behavior equals rewards or punishment, because of all of the externalizing of values. What people do more than anything else is they're constantly editing their experience, altering the facts of an actual situation, altering the facts of a dynamic. What is the dynamic that's in front of you? Like, be really clear about it. The people that are in your life, do you want to work with them? Do you want to be in relationship with them? Or are they rejected because they're not these other people that have something that you want that you don't have? Work tactically with what's available to you. And what's not available to you has nothing to do with you. And that should be you should have like blinders on with the stuff that you have no control over and the stuff that is not available to you. You're not doing referendums on what someone did or didn't do, how they did or didn't serve you, what you did or didn't deserve. Because that's assuming that somebody else cast a value judgment on you that you didn't deserve, when their value judgment has nothing to do with you and has nothing to do with deserve. And so if you're plagiarizing others' work, if you're looking for your inspiration outside of yourself, if you're building castles with things that you're finding outside of yourself that don't come through you as novelty, as inspired by the source of your own experiences, as the maturity that came from looking at those experiences and translating them into meaning, and the maturity that comes of knowing how you translate into meaning and what your meaning looks like and what art form it takes. If it's not that, and you're just repurposing material to repurpose material, to churn material, to make material, if you are just taking like a scavenger from everywhere but a sense of your own self, that's the shadow attribute of what it means to interact with information, preserve it, and translate it into meaning. If you're just like combing, everybody else's work and putting it into ChatGPT and churning it out, then you will drown in a creative economy. If you are just churning everyone else's work and repurposing it for yourself, then you will drown in a creative economy. But if you are connected to the source of your own wisdom from your own experiences and relaying that message in the way that your voice is purposed to do, then you're operating in your purpose and you're operating in alignment, and you're energetically infused by the energy of ascended ancestors, ascended guides, and ascended gods and goddesses, because you're not being driven like a car by the ancestors who want to get something that they didn't have for themselves through you, by keeping you from even knowing yourself, by giving you like these driving directions. Be driven, like get these things, hold them, acquire them, acquisitions, holdings, status, quality of life. That's a narcissist collapse. That's a narcissist collapse right now. And so the scribe about preserving knowledge and information, what's the valuable? What's the value? Because we do all get our inspiration in one way or another from others, but how we translate that inspiration through our own experience makes it novel. And so if we just avoid our own experience to try and like coast on the stories or the experiences of others, try to live through the stories or the experience of others, if we are spinning out in our imagination with people who are not there, and either stories of condemnation or stories of praise, we're still abandoning where we are, which is not a spirituality that's going to serve anybody. And so with the root chakra, be rooted in the source of your creation and creation, which is your body and everything that your body tells you in the way of information. That Scorpio, that transformation that you're being called in, is outside of the vampiric stuff. And there's no like big shame parade, like this, the people who like feel shame when they have a moment of conviction, that's also a narcissistic thing. To have conviction is to say, oh, wait a minute, that's a level of maturity that I didn't have. That's a maturity that somebody else is putting on display, or that's a maturity that I recognize as being different from the place that I find myself in and will be a more useful position to work from. I want to work towards that. But I have to bring it through my own experience. I have to test these ideas, these theories, and these thoughts out through the filter of my own vantage point, my own perspective making. I'm not going, this notion of supremacy is elevating someone else's position and somebody else's voice above your own. That's terrible. You don't want to do that. You want to sing like you. You don't want to sing like somebody else. You want to have your life. You don't want to have the experience of someone else. And so somebody else's voice is a guidepost. It's a beacon even. It's even something to reorient by. It's tools in the room that the divine is giving you by way of external things to look at and incorporate and work with. But if it doesn't go through that transformative intimacy with self and intimacy with your own experience and intimacy with your higher self and your own voice, then there's no novelty being developed by way of like what is produced in the maturing process of going from here's where I am, there's what I want to be, here's all the tools I have, and this is the experience I have to work with. Now that whole journey is going to make you more you. It's not going to be, I don't want to be here I am, and I'm going to work really hard to avoid where I am by doing all these other things. And like this stuff is confusing. A lack of maturity means you're making decisions without the information that is going to give you that more maturity. But we gain maturity in increments, and we get in the direction that we're going. Like it's a chessboard, okay? So like you're not just going to go from point A to point B. You're going to make 15 moves. Some of those moves in the wrong direction. Some of those moves are going to be closed doors that like really focused where you're actually going. That's how we move through life. That's how we advance through life. That's how we gain the maturity that gets us to the location that we're meant to be in. It's a process of strategy. It's a process of discovery. It's a process of chutes and ladders. But ultimately, like what comes of that in the way of maturity and strength is you continuing to base camp at the level of your own experience and your own perception and how that translates through you. It's not aspirational. It's a reckoning of prayer. And so that's where your prosperity is. Your prosperity doesn't come from other places. And if your prosperity is coming from other places, then you're a house built on sand. And your nine of wands, like rain of whatever you acquired and are holding, that's all you're going to get if you have to acquire it and hold it. If it's not just a flow that moves through you and takes you where you're meant to go. If it's not the power of a channeled message that comes through, or a channeled piece of art that comes through, or a channeled piece of wisdom that comes through, or a channeled asset in a relationship that you didn't realize was needed by somebody else that is crucial to the development of where that relationship is going. All that stuff is provided for you, and it's provided for those who are connected to this process of experiencing maturing through what they have on offer at the ready in the way of ascended energies. It's not bottom feeding, grasping and grabbing, holding as an acquisition. It's there is no end, the catalyst. You know, the hound is about like these chains and these promises and this loyalty to stuff that you have no business being loyal to. If it's not serving your maturity, if it's not serving to empower you, if it's not serving to give you some strength. If you are in positions in life or in relationships with life that are not empowering you, that you just have to acquire and hold, ask yourself how much loyalty you really need to apply to the situation as it stands. Because whenever you are in a place that is too tight and it doesn't fit right, there's a call to grow. And that growth is often a call to change. And so that willingness to change says, I'm not going to be loyal to a life path, a job, or something that is running me like a car, that is not giving me anything, that is not helping me mature, that is not helping me feel empowered, that is not helping me gain strength. That loyalty, chains, and promises, some of it is to be a good person based on dogma that doesn't apply to a situation where you don't need to be a good person. You need to sort people out that aren't on the level with you and sort people in that are, and they're going to signal not by way of favors and acquisition and holding. They're going to signal by way of maturity. You're going to see it in a blink of an eye. You're going to see someone wave that red flag and you're going to say no thank you. And the same is true of you. And you're going to say that, you know, to the person who saw me wave my red flag of lack of maturity, thank you for getting out of my way and allowing me to be where I am, because I'm going to grow from here without your judgment. You aren't mature any more than you are mature. You are mature or immature in relationship to somebody else, and that sorts who is available to you and who is not available to you. And that acceptance of Saturn is not about being a vampire and blaming people for not giving you what you need. Because the way that this ecosystem works, you are meant to free yourself from wherever you're not supposed to be in relationship to people, in relationship to a job, and in the relationship to what you want and what is for you and what is not for you. And so where you have promises and loyalty, I worked for this, it's going to be mine now forever. Really? Because I think you're worth more than that. And I think you know that you're worth more than that. And I think that your life is meant to expand you and expand your maturity and expand your skill set, which means that you're always going to be pushed a little out of your comfort zone. But that's where the 10 of Cups is. That's where the 2 of Cups is, because the bounty of the maturity that goes with the process of being willing to work through your comfort zone and into another leveled up kind of place of development. There's risks, there's courage, but there's also rewards and the access that is provided to you in storms with that skill set to others who recognize at an energetic level that you're on the level and that you can build with, and that you can be a catalyst for these radical change. You can discover new things, and you can be what brings in novelty and wisdom at the level of, again, your experience is going to afford you that. If it doesn't afford you that, then you need to work on what it means to get there. And that's fun. It's like fun to do. That's self-discovery, fun to do. And so we're going to attention to, these cards keep on flipping in a really big way, but we're going to read them all and we're going to kind of end there. Bottom of the deck, taking command and teamwork. Take command. Take dominion over your world with the Emperor. Take dominion over the empty room that you find yourself in and whatever's in there, and say, I'm going to make order on this chaos. And when I make order on this chaos, I'm going to decide what else to do. And even if you find that you have these things that are in your way, what are you dealing with in the way of minotaurs that you have to slay? Slay them. That's part of your maturing process. If you feel disempowered and you feel like you can't do it on your own, part of your maturing process is finding what tools are available to you, what help is available to you, and what is not available to you, and working with what you can tactically manage to have at the ready. And it might not be what you want. It might just be what you have to work with. That's the Saturn energy. And so the attention to detail and the pride is put down your pride about what is and isn't. There's a lot that you don't have control over. Attend to what you do. That's what your purpose to work with right now is going to get you to your next level up when it comes to maturity. That next level up when it comes to maturity is the threshold. And at that threshold are new opportunities. But you can't get there without the work. Responsibility and expectations. You have a responsibility to get yourself out of whatever stuck position you ever find yourself in over and over and over and over again, even with limited tools, even with a story that says that you don't have what it takes to get where you're going. Because again, like nothing new under the sun. The oppressed have always been feeling exactly what you're feeling in the way of lack of opportunity, but they develop the traits that you're developing now, and then they pass those traits on, and now they live on in the future that is you that has the traits, and it's like it's your turn. You have the baton, and I see one of those like the Olympics where like someone runs up with the lit torch and passes it to you. Now you have these traits. Take them the next mile. Learn how to use them. We're gonna be a world of spiritual infrastructure for the next people to inherit this. You have an eternity to work with who you are. You have an eternity to know how to work with these traits for those that come after you. That is the value to your legacy. What is not a value to your legacy is learning nothing about these traits, hating them your whole life, dying and looking back at all of the unused value with the Nine of Pentacles, because you instead were going to do the right path and the easy thing to do so that you could have the quality of life that was prescribed to you. Lucky for you, that quality of life that was a prescription is making itself known as a non-starter for everyone, so that you aren't, you're not reinventing the wheel here. You're just accepting the circumstances that you have and knowing that there's an opportunity built in to maturing through them. The divine timing and evaluation, the gods are on it. They're about your development. They're about your maturity. That's the only thing that they're about, because that maturity is their maturity. That expansion is their expansion. And so they want to expand you. The universe wants to give you what you are meant to have and what you are purposed for. The only thing that you can do to cut yourself off from the prosperity and the abundance of Gaia is step into some role that was never meant to be yours in the first place. With the air, unseen potential and hesitation, you have everything that you need to become the person that you are. You have all of the story that you could ever possibly need to express through to find the identity and the voice that is meant to be the one that you express with. There's nothing that you weren't born with. That baby that is born has an inestimable, you can't even estimate that worth, because it's a potential that is unseen, that is in every aspect of that child's being and expression. And even if we don't understand the story and the potential in that story that child comes into the world and expresses through, the gods do. And they can make that known, and they can put that on display. Being open to participate in the inspiration of understanding these things is part of what it is to pray. And so with the self-expression and strength, that's how you're going to know yourself. And it takes strength, and it takes strength training to find your voice and express your voice in a way that is going to become that maturity around your voice. If you have to really try hard to make a sound, and then that sound comes out sounding wrong, and then you go hiding in the cave in that room, and you don't keep on working on what it means to not only hear your own voice, but listen to it, and in listening to it, decide that you have power to do a lot of creative things with it, and work with that power and that creativity, and strengthen it, and practice it, and listen to it again, and strengthen it, and practice it, and listen to it again, and get to the point where you go from cringing from your voice, which has a lot to do with conditioning and has nothing to do with reality, because the voice that you were born with as an infant is of a value that can't even be articulated. And so if you know that the voice is worth cultivating. If it's not appreciated, that's fine. You're going to appreciate it, and you're going to find a way to get to a place where it's strong enough that it does find the right people, because it is part of the maturity that, again, signals to the right people welcome in, and signals to the wrong people go away. Taking command and teamwork. There's this predestination. Where are you meant to be? You're there. Who are you meant to be? You already have those things. What does it mean to express it? That's the experiencing. That's the free will. That's your job. And so you have everything you need to achieve this. You are the champion in your own right, and you can become a champion over your circumstances. That is your only call to duty. You're not meant to save others. That white savior thing trips people up. And it trips you up no matter what you were born to and who you were born to. It's part of this culture of patriarchy. You have to save yourself. And in doing so, you become a beacon that saves others. Everything else, there's a story there about your supremacy that you maybe need to work with a little bit. And so the production and creation, like you're meant to produce, you're meant to create, not for the machine, for your sense of your own self. And there is a storm right now. And there's a catalyst for radical change. There's radical change that is needed. Things are trembling. There's a way in which hard work will still get people something, but it's that 9 of Wands. It's that we are at the last phases of like what it means for there to be major transformation. We are in this storm, and I'm just going to pull a couple of cards on that storm, and then we're going to end there. Because everything that we have here about what it means for you to lock into the value of what you were born with. You start with there is no end to the value that you were born with. There is an inestimable, you cannot estimate the value of your worth. And certainly nobody else can. So you start right there. I am worth so much. I was born with a purpose to discover. You were born with a purpose to discover. The clues of the purpose that you're meant to discover have everything to do with all the experiences that happened that you had no control over. All that you are meant to become is between where you start with those experiences and where you end up with the maturing through those experiences. So what does it mean for you to first identify where you're not that mature? And that's okay. Gosh, there's no shame in it. There's just finding that you have a lack of maturity. How do you find that you have a lack of maturity? Are you tyrannical about some 9 of Wands situation that isn't you, but that you're upholding? That's a clue. There's a lot of clues, you know? And so when you start with those clues, make a game of it. Make it fun. Make it funny. We all start immature, and there's nothing wrong with it. But admit, I don't have the maturity in these different areas, and that's on me. Now you have power because you have a place to become empowered through and something to work with in the way of gaining experience. Going forward, we're at the threshold. Stop scavenging. Stop it. You know, stop trying to hold something up on like shaky. I see somebody just like having this loyalty to what they have built. Don't do that. Everything's crumbling. That's the storm. Doesn't mean that you're going to lose everything. It just means where you have loyalty and chains, like don't let that be to like the status quo. Don't let it be to whatever you assumed the world was going to offer you in the way of expectations. Don't even let that be in what it means for you to think about like what opportunities are available and will not be available. Opportunities that will be available to you at an energetic level, very basically, if we move beyond all of the rules and regulations and we talk about what manifestation actually is, the opportunities that are going to be available to you are in relationship to your maturity level and what you that signals energetically to those who have something on offer. So you need to go through this purification. And it's a gift. It's a gift. If you're in some form of like narcissist collapse, I don't want you to think about that as like, no, I'm the boogeyman. No, I want you to think about that as in a collapse where you've got nothing to hold you and you have nowhere to hold you and you don't know what to do. It's because the systems of acquiring status are no longer available. And if they are, and you're 9 of Wands holding it up and you're getting nothing, but like the world hates you and you hate the world, if that's where you are with your what you've acquired and what you're holding, don't be loyal to that. Think about, okay, I'm going to give this a minimal effort while I do a complete and total reconstruction on what it is to connect with my giftedness and take dominion over a situation where I feel like things are vampiring out of me or I'm being a vampire. Because that's this like, that empath narcissist like dynamic. Both things are different sides of the same coin if you're self-abandoning. And if you don't know who you are and you don't know what you have on offer, and if what you have on offer comes from something outside of yourself. That's gonna be the collapse. And it's a good collapse, and it's a collapse that you want to embrace, because that purification and going forward is the change that you require right now. And that change is required because the storm is gonna shake things up, and there is a storm coming. There are so many storms coming that it's not even worth it for me to point to them. And so rather than tell you to like, you know, there's a storm or, oh my gosh, no, there's always gonna be a storm. You're going to get a really strong center of gravity around what it is to be a good sailor in a storm. And then every storm that comes is just an opportunity for adventure and an opportunity for you to enjoy the diversity of experience. And it's not here to destroy you. Because the storm, Like I see a surfboard, I see someone surfing, I see a storm, and I see someone, a sailor, who knows how to sail in a storm and really knows how to work with the wind as it comes in. And I see this life as being a grand, beautiful adventure where the skill set matches the storm at hand, and there is no problem in the movement and the enjoyment of that movement and that 2 of Cups, 10 of Cups experience with those who are really gaining mastery over what it is to be living through a storm. That's going to be connected to the source of nature as a part of you and an extension of you. That's going to be connected to the Gaia, the earth. That's going to be rooted in who you are and what you have available to you and what mastery you have gained through the storms. A narcissist collapse, and what a narcissist essentially is somebody who is not going to survive the storm because they're looking for somebody else to sail it for them. They're looking for some boat to get on that has nothing to do with them, and they're dependent on something outside of them in order to survive, and that's really scary. That's really disempowering. And so a narcissist isn't someone who's evil necessarily. It's someone who's on either side of that narcissist empath coin of disempowerment, thinking that the power has to come from some manipulation of either serving somebody or being served by someone that has nothing to do with self-development and self-discovery and maturing. And so that self-discovery and that maturing at this 8th house question of what are you holding on to with that 9 of Wands? What are you making a life with? What are you holding and acquiring? What are you acquiring and holding? When you should probably not be holding anything, and whatever you're acquiring should be a flow of movement that moves with you. And if it's not, then it's not for you to hold on to. And if there's what seems like lack when it comes to prosperity, there's change that is required to move you out of wherever there's not enough into something that expands. And not that not enough, whether it's a skill set or it's a coping skill, there's room for maturity. Because it signals that there's room for maturity when there's not enough. And so, once again, the productivity and the creation here at the bottom of the deck, your guides are saying 2 of Cups. The people that are around you are meant to be around you. If they're not meant to be around you, it's because they have signals to you by way of value and devalue based on however you value yourself, that they're either here for you or they're not. If they're not here for you, it's not a referendum on your value. It's not a referendum on their value either. It's just look at the picture in front of you. And so we have these Saturn structures to contend with, but within those Saturn structures, one of which is a storm here, we're meant to embrace the change, and we're meant to embrace ourselves. And that is where we're starting with the painter, the production and creation. Make your life your art form, and bring life into what it is to create into that space. And when you're doing that, it's about you. And it's about all the things having to do with you. And taking dominion of your life and creating into that space and materially making the stuff happen and manifesting and making yourself an energetic match for the stuff that you want, and making sure that the stuff that you want and that you do want, making sure the stuff you want has nothing to do with stuff that isn't going to serve you and that doesn't serve you and has nothing to do with your voice, and has everything to do with something else that is contrived. You gotta watch that. We all gotta watch that, because there's so much indoctrination around value and the way you value yourself and the way that you value others and the way that we abandon in response to all of that, that needs to be undone, redone, ripped up from the roots, rooted in the wrong stuff, rooted in a way of being seen that has nothing to do with you, rooted in a way of being in the world that is just something that you've adopted for whatever reason. Where is your loyalty? Where you are stuck, there's always room for development. And so your guides are saying the change is here with the storm. There's no avoiding it. But going forward, there's a purification process that comes with embracing your life and life on life's terms, and then working with life on life's terms, that then brings you into a place where you're preserving knowledge and information for translation with communication that is of value with that Knight of Cups, that is practiced to a certain extent, and allows you to be in orbit with people who are going to see you clearly, work with you, and be a part of your life, out of orbit with those who aren't. And that's where the 10 of Cups is. And so you stand at the threshold of a rerouting. And in that rerouting, that's where the productivity, that's where the creation, that's where the inspiration, that's where the whole experience of your prosperity comes from. And so I invite you into that process. And I'm going to leave that there, and we're going to work on this. And if you have questions, if you come to the end of this reading and you say to yourself, you know what, that inspired me, but it also made me feel worse about myself. That's not what this is about. And so if you feel worse about yourself, there's an opportunity for growth there. You know, that none of this is designed to make you feel worse about yourself. And so if you're doing your tally of what deserves and blames and all of that stuff, and you're finding out that what is making you feel worse about yourself is a message that you are of inestimable value, and this entire lifespan is about you finding what that value is and translating into meaning so you can move forward with it. If that's what makes you feel bad about yourself, because that's the gist, that's the summary, then maybe you want to work with that a little bit. And maybe you want to also stand up and say, no, I can't feel a different way. I am stuck in the position that I am in. And have people who have gotten out of that permission, let them give you access to a different story that they have lived. Because I guarantee whatever like life-altering situation you find yourself in the way of circumstances, there are both those that came before, those that came after, and those that are among you that you don't even know about, that have dealt with what you're dealing with, and your maturity with what you're dealing with, and their maturity with what they dealt with when they were dealing with what you were dealing with. They might have something to offer you, but you have to be able to look up from valuing your pain above everybody else's experiences in order to get the value of that. And that takes a level of knowing where you are with something. And so again, like, I encourage you to be challenged, but I also encourage you not to give up at the level of challenge. I encourage you to look at the challenge as being an opportunity to overcome the storm, to get that heads up, because that's what we're doing with the spiritual practice. And so with that, your prosperity is assured. And your prosperity comes in the form of maturity. It doesn't come another way, because that's the strength that you really bring into the world that opens every door. There's not another way. And so with that, you were born with everything that you need to prosper. It's all there for the taking. You just have to mature through your experience and you'll have it. And I'm just listening to the guys, and I think that's it. Okay, we're going to leave it there.